My name, for those of you who don't know, and I think everyone who's on does, is Dave Gorin, Executive Director of the National Sports Media Association. We want to thank our sponsors of this Playing It Forward, oops, I already misspoke, Paying It Forward, Paying It Back series, Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. Wait, here comes Chase in. They are sponsoring this, so we thank them very much. And today we're going to talk about attitude and how important that is in staying positive, finding a job, changing careers, changing your role, all of that. And our guests today, Kelly Burke McMillin and Mike Maniscalco. Rather than me reading a bio, I always like to have the panelists tell their own story. So, Kelly, I will start with you. Welcome, and tell us how you got to be where you are today and the steps along the way.
So I went to Arizona State for college and was an athlete there. I ran track and cross country. And then when I graduated, I went into local TV. So I worked at stations in sports as a sportscaster, stations all around the country for 11 years. Worked in Oregon and then worked in Illinois. And about 4 years ago, I had always, when I moved to Illinois, I'd been asked to do a couple of high school state championship games and to work them as an analyst. And I enjoyed it, but never really thought about doing it full time. And then I started doing more and more games on the side, even when I was working my local TV job, I was asked to do some volleyball as an analyst and figured out pretty quickly that I loved it. And I loved that it was live. I loved the challenge of it, that it was all unscripted, that you didn't, have a teleprompter for it. And so it kind of got my wheels turning. I always thought I wanted to be in local TV. My goal initially for a long time was to be a sportscaster in Phoenix at the Fox station where I interned in college. And then I started seeing the local TV industry, to be honest, it was changing a lot, local TV, especially in big markets. They were cutting a lot of sports departments down. Even just the time that they give on the local news to do sports, that was sort of going away. And so when I started doing more and more games, I knew that I was onto something, and I figured out that was actually where my passion really was. And so 4 years ago, I decided I quit my local TV job. I had a good gig. I loved where I worked. The station that I worked at was really good to me, but I decided that I thought I could get enough work doing games. I had enough contacts. So I kind of just pieced together a schedule that first year doing football and volleyball and basketball. And then it's kind of grown from there over the last 4 years. And then kind of in the middle of that, I moved from Illinois to Florida. So I still do a lot of games in the Midwest, but I work primarily as an analyst. I sideline report for football, and then I also do play-by-play for certain sports too, depending on the season. So I feel like I've finally found my real calling, so to say, in sports.
Thank you. Mike Maniscalco, what's your story?
A little bit more of a circuitous route than what Kelly took to get here. Grew up in Buffalo, New York, and always knew that I wanted to do something sports related. Like that was the passion. That's where it was related. And when it occurred to me very early on that my lack of athletic talent was not going to propel me onto the field, what's the next best thing that you can do? But I suffered a knee injury that cut short a Division III college football career before it even got off the ground. But I got into the local radio station, the college radio station that was student run. Then that turned into the student TV station that luckily at Buffalo State, which is where I went to, they gave us a ton of authority to basically run the departments by ourselves. So I got on the job training just by doing the job, not just necessarily going to class. So I did that, interned with the local ABC affiliate. And then because I lucked out, believe it or not, the knee injury turned into a lucky thing. Kelly, I know that no athlete ever wants to get an injury, but for me, it turned out to work because I got with a student-run radio station, and all of the upperclassmen had to work for the sophomore who came in and, kind of knew sports. And, basically it was at the advent, or I guess we could say apex. I'll go with you, Dave. Was the big show when it was Olbermann and Patrick? Was that the height of ESPN? However we want to get into it.
I think most people would say yes.
So we're watching that every single night, and we're thinking, okay, we can do this. This is what we want to get into. So from Buff State, I parlayed the career of kind of knowing the football team into being the analyst my sophomore year, to the play-by-play voice my junior and senior year. And then because I hired all of these upperclassmen, they would get jobs locally in the market and then leave when they graduated. And they had to hire somebody. So they kind of felt indebted to me, which was kind of nice. And I got all of these jobs or internships because of the people who I worked with. So I was in Buffalo until 2001. I worked for WGR Sports Talk Radio. When they flipped to Sports Talk, folks who are tuning in, I know this sounds crazy, but not every city in America had a sports talk station in 2000 or 2001. We flipped, I think, in 99, if I remember, and I went from being the assistant production director, morning show producer, weekend talk show host, name the list. Plus, I was the weekend producer with Matt Yaloff at the ABC affiliate in Buffalo, to a full-time sports talk gig, which took me to Richmond, which took me to Raleigh. But I had a hockey background. I interned for the Buffalo Sabres coaching staff. It's one of these things where I think if I ever sat down to write it, nobody would believe the story of how I got here and the people who I've got to meet. But I knew this is what I wanted to do. And also for me, for play-by-play, it was something I always wanted to do, but sports talk became the career path. So I followed that, but every opportunity I had the chance to do high school football in Richmond, or high school basketball, or college basketball. I worked for the University of Virginia Sports Network as far as pre and post game show host, but for the ACC tournament, they did those games. Nobody really at the time wanted to do. Dave, I know it's very exciting when Wake Forest and Clemson clash in that 12-14 ACC game. I was handed those games to do that. So every play-by-play opportunity I had the chance to do, I would always keep that. And now with the opportunity that's been presented to me with the Carolina Hurricanes, you just keep the attitude of what you want to do. You never close any doors, because you never know when somebody is going to ask you to walk through one of them. So it's a very circuitous route, but here I am and quite happy to be here.
You kind of left out a step. You got let go from station in Raleigh radio,
Yes.
right? Go back and tell that story and how you ended up from there coming back to the Carolina Hurricanes.
Well, in this situation, I went from Richmond, Virginia, when the fans started, 99.9, the fans started in Raleigh, North Carolina, for those of you who don't know. That started up in 2007. So I got the morning show gig, and they bought the rights to the Carolina Hurricanes games. And I was never going to be, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Dave and Kelly, I do not want to hog your time on this, so apologies. I was never going to be the pre and post game show host for the Hurricanes. They had a guy in mind, but it wasn't going well the first month. So the program director, Dave Shore at the time, went back over my resume and goes, "Did I see that you did hockey pre and post game and you worked for a hockey team?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely, I did." And he goes, "Well, could you fill this in for a little bit?" And so I did. So from 2007 until 2016, give or take, 9.5 years, I worked for sports radio and 99 The Fan here in Raleigh. Well, a regime change comes in, certain things happen. I lost my job. There's no other way to put it. I was let go, and I was looking for work. And you get to this point, for everybody who's listening, I don't know if where you are at your station or what you've done at this point in life, but to go your whole life and not get fired, it's a unicorn in this business, because it's going to happen, because a new boss comes in, or a new group buys the station you work for and they want to change things, or they need to cut certain budgets. But I made it basically 20 years without ever getting fired. I moved from job to job willingly. So I got let go. But luckily, because of my time with Virginia and at Richmond, and then my time here in Raleigh, I made enough contacts. And with the people who I worked with at the ACC tournament or at a college football game, or, if somebody was in town and they needed something, the folks at IMG Radio had me on their radar. So IMG opened up a position for me when I got let go from 99.9 The Fan. And I had an opportunity to work in Winston-Salem, where it's an awesome town. Dave, I really am upset you and I have never got to live next to each other as neighbors because of that opportunity missed. But I worked for Winston-Salem and I worked for IMG College. And it's funny, I was there for 3 months and I was doing their college football show and college basketball and everything with it. And it's a great show, but it was an internet station. But it's funny because you work with kids who want to get to kind of where you were. And, I kind of took for granted that I'd been a host and I've done play-by-play. And, I had a show in Richmond and I had a show in Raleigh, and all of these young hosts who were coming up where I was like, well, what was it like? I felt like Crash Davis, to be honest with you. I'm like, I was in the show, best 21 days of my life. And I worked there, but because of the relationships I made with the Carolina Hurricanes, their pregame show host and intermission host left to take a job with NHL Network. But because of the connections I made with the team, it opened up the opportunity for me to actually stay in Raleigh. I didn't have to move to Winston-Salem, and I've got the job as far as pre and post-game show host and intermission host. And then, this past year, the play-by-play job opened up, and they opened the door for me, and I've walked through it. So here we are. So I could go deeper into it, Dave, but it was really because of the connections you make with people and how you treat them and the attitude they have towards you. When you're in this industry, you're going to be looking for a job at some point. So as long as there's somebody out there who remembers you, or you did the job the right way, or you took care of them, they'll keep a door open for you if one is able to be that way for you.
We kind of developed the mantra, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Yeah, very
So,
fair.
Kelly, you want to address that a little bit, and also talk a little bit, if you would, about your Voices and Visionaries. You do a little video podcast as well, right?
Yeah. So talking as far as the networking aspect, that was a huge part of the reason.
Yes,
when
I'd
I
like y'all
decided-
to maybe write a little bit in response to what they.
When I decided to quit my local TV job, that was a huge part of the reason I knew that I would be okay going into doing games full time, because obviously when I do it, I'm a freelancer. So I don't, I'm not getting paid a paycheck every 2 weeks. To be honest, for 8 or 9 months of the year, I work very steadily. And then I get to sort of the end of college sports season, and I have some of the summer where it's a lot leaner as far as what's going on, and having to get a little bit creative as far as budgeting and that sort of thing with my money. But I had contacts specifically in the Midwest with the Missouri Valley Conference. And so I leveraged a lot of those contacts when I was leaving local TV to start getting, that's how I got all the football assignments, the game of the week that I do for Missouri Valley football, was I leveraged the contacts I had with the league. Same thing with basketball. I told them I was going to be leaving my local TV job. I'd love to get more opportunities. So I just kept leveraging those contacts to continue to get more and more games. And a lot of it, I mean, it's like Mike says, just building your reputation. And I think a lot of that for me is that I'm one of those people that is over prepared for everything. And so my preparation is huge. I mean, even for, I'll just use college football as an example. I mean, even though as a sideline reporter, you're going to prepare, and Dave, you know this, probably 80% of the stuff you prepare for, you're never going to use on air. But I go so far back researching stuff. I mean, the most obscure stories you could ever come up with. And I sort of live for that when I'm doing the research. But that's honestly what's set me apart as a sideline reporter, and just even as an analyst in play-by-plays, that I have information and I have stories that a lot of other people that are doing it don't have. And that's something I've continued to try and leverage, especially now that I live in Florida, just trying to make contacts down here in the Southeast and in Florida, because again, most of my games are in the Midwest still. I fly out at some point in a normal, not in a pandemic per se, but in a normal situation, I'm flying out every week to do games, and a lot of them are in the Midwest. So I do some games in Florida, but that's something I'm still trying to build up down here. To answer what Dave mentioned about the Voices and Visionaries podcast, that was something that I started in July, at the beginning of July. I wanted to do, I have a college football podcast that I host for the Missouri Valley Football Conference, but I've wanted to start a women in sports media podcast for a while, because there's not really anybody out there doing that per se, or there wasn't. And so I finally, when the pandemic happened, I finally had the time. So I decided to just go for it and start it. And so, yeah, I started in July. It's called Voices and Visionaries, the Female Forces in Sports Media. And I interview women in the industry, all different backgrounds, whether it's TV, whether it's radio, newspaper. I had Suzanne Smith on the other week. She's the only female director that's directing NFL games at any network. So production people, social media, and it's been fun. It's, you know, I know obviously a lot of women and just people in general in this industry, but to be able to bring on different voices and to hear the journey that they've had and the stories that they've had. And then it's been a great way, even some people that I don't know personally or I have yet to meet in person, to get to network with them through the podcast. The one that came out this week was with Leslie Visser. And for any of you who have had the privilege of meeting Leslie, she's just an incredible person. Besides the fact that she's covered 35 Super Bowls and 35 Final Fours and the Triple Crown and the World Series and Wimbledon and you name it, she's an amazing person, and her stories are absolutely legendary. And she's got this witty sense of humor and this facility with words that it's just, I was laughing for half the interview because the stories she was telling were so ridiculous sometimes.
Great sense of humor.
Yeah.
So this is all about attitude. You talked about liking to do the research. So it takes that attitude for you to do that, right?
Yeah. No, I think in our industry, you have to enjoy the process just as much as you actually enjoy going on the air. I mean, the going on the air part of it is just sort of the end game. If you don't enjoy the process, the research, the travel, the phone calls, the watching film, and everything that goes into it, then you're honestly probably in the wrong industry, because there's so much behind the scenes work that goes into doing games and goes into doing our jobs. And so and let's be honest, we work in an industry, a lot of us that, do I work a lot of hours when I'm in season? Absolutely. But I don't feel like I'm working. I'm not working at a bank 9 to 5. I'm not working in the grocery store. No disrespect to either of those careers, but there's a lot worse things we could be doing than calling sports. And so I think you have to embrace everything about it. People ask me all the time, because again, in a normal situation, I'm traveling every week from Florida. I might be home 2 days a week, 3 days max. And they ask me, why do you get on an airplane every week? Doesn't that wear on you? And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the travel doesn't become a grind at times, but if you love what you do and you embrace the process of it, it's just the travel is just a byproduct of it.
Mm-hmm. And staying positive no matter what you have to deal with is important, Mike, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because you know what, and kind of what Kelly just said, Kelly, how much, as far as research goes, if we're researching a game, and for hockey these last 4 years when I'm the sideline reporter and, intermission, 90% of the things we research never make it to the air, right? I mean, but I'm with you. It's finding the stories, or when you're talking to a player, you find out a story about someone and you might not use it for that game, but you know what, in Kelly's case, 2 weeks down the road, she might get that same team. She has that in her back pocket. That player is going to be even more willing to tell her a story. And I'm with you, Kelly. You have to appreciate the grind. And at the same time, Dave, with what you just said, you need to stay positive because, this is an industry where you're going to be told no a heck of a lot more than you're told yes by people. And that's even from the best SIDs in America. And in this case, public relations people in pro sports, you're going to get no a heck of a lot more about a story idea or something you want to find out than yes. But, as long as you keep coming at it with this attitude of, I got a really good idea. If I can get it in front of the right person, I'll get the opportunity to tell this story. And, I think that's one of the things that when you talk about keeping that positive attitude, you can't get defeated in this industry when somebody tells you no about something. You just can't. You can't be like, oh, well, then there's no point in me, researching this story. No, keep researching that story or reach out. And, I'm fortunate that I work for a team where I can keep talking to a player on a daily basis and maybe flesh out the story even more to make it better. Even if the team said no, or with Fox Sports, who I work with, if they're like, well, this isn't a story we're looking at right now, but, a week, a month down the road, maybe that's a story that becomes a bigger deal. And so you can't get upset. You can't get defeated. And, attitude, when you talk about it, is 90% of it. If you walk into a locker room or talk to a coach or talk to a player or other media members and you walk in with this defeatist attitude or, oh, well, let me tell you about this, that gets noticed by everybody in the room. I mean, it's not just the coaches, the reporters, and Kelly, I mean, that when you talk to a player, they pick up on the attitude that you're giving out to them. So if you come in with a positive attitude or tell them what you want to do with the story, they kind of, if you're positive about it, they're going to be willing to give you a little bit more on an angle that you're working or something that, maybe you're trying to pick up on than if you come in and be like, well, this is a throwaway, but let me just ask you about it.
Kelly, you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think attitude is so incredibly important. I look at no's as just not yet.
Yeah.
I actually had, gosh, it probably was 7 years ago now, at least. There's a woman I know at ESPN who does some work in their talent department, and I had sent her, we were friendly, and I sent her my reel. This is when I was working in local TV, just to get her thoughts. And, I told her my aspirations to go to the Phoenix market in a big market and wanted to get her feedback. And she was brutally honest when she emailed me back about my reel and just said, I don't think you're ready to go, you're ready for the regional level right now. I don't think you're ready to go to the national level. And, she said typically if in sports, at least for women, if you don't get to the network level by such and such age, and I think she gave like 35 or 37 or something, chances are you're not going to get there. And I read that email, and it was like getting punched in the stomach. I was super depressed about it for a couple of days, and then I just decided I had to get over it, and I had to do something to keep bettering myself, that I wasn't going to be discouraged by it. And so it's funny because I still talk to her. We still email a couple of times a year, and her feedback now is a lot different than it was when I was doing local TV. But if I would have listened to that one email, I probably wouldn't even be in the sports industry anymore. And so I think you have to look at negative feedback and no's as motivation and fuel to drive you and to get better, because we have to have a growth mindset. We have to constantly be working on our craft. One of the guys I work with a lot on games is a guy named Scott Warman, and he's in the St. Louis market, and he does a ton of stuff for Fox Sports Midwest with the Blues coverage and St. Louis Cardinals. And he's one of their studio hosts. And Scotty's been in this business, gosh, probably 25 years now. And one of the things I respect about him most is he'll do, let's say, the Blues pre and post game shows from the night before, and then he'll get up the next morning and he'll go back and he'll watch the broadcast again and to see what he can do better. And you're talking, this is a guy that's been doing it for 20 plus years, and he's still trying to figure out ways he can get better. And so it's hard not to be able to respect people like that. The other thing I think that is really important is you just sort of have to have this no excuses mindset. And I think when you don't make excuses for yourself. People notice, coaches notice when you, as Mike was talking about, when you go in the locker room with a positive attitude, when you don't complain about your travel or the long hours you're putting in. Or the example that comes to mind recently for me is I had a stretch in February. I did a game, a women's basketball game on a Friday night, and I got off the air. We went to double overtime. It was 10:30 at night or so, and one of my bosses happened to be on site, and he came over and he said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to practice," because I had another game at that site 2 days later on Sunday. And he said, "Well, I just got a call from CBS Sports, and they're having an emergency. They need a fill-in emergency analyst for the men's basketball game tomorrow in Southern Illinois, Bradley at SIU men's basketball. They want to put you on the game. We want to put you on the game. You've got 5 minutes to go to the bathroom and think about it, but we need to know right away." Because he said, the game's in 13 hours. And so I knew right away I wanted to do it. So I just said, I don't need to think about it. I want to do the game. But again, there was a lot of stuff that went into that, because as I mentioned, I'm somebody that prepares like no other for a game. So all of a sudden I'm in a situation where the game's tipping off in 13 hours. A game, two teams I have not seen at all play in person that season. I'd seen them once or twice on TV. I had not started prepping for that game. Again, there's a lot of stuff to be done in those 13 hours. And not to mention the game site was 4 hours from where I was. So I went back to the hotel. I prepped for about 3 hours till about 2:30 in the morning. Slept for 3 hours, got on the road by 6:30 or 7 in the morning, drove the 4 hours down to Carbondale. I was talking to SIDs on the way. I was talking to Brian Mullins, SIU head men's coach. Then I met with Brian Wardle on site, the Bradley head men's basketball coach. And I did the game and it went really, really well. But the thing was, I got done with that game and I still had a game Sunday, early afternoon back at the site I had come from. So I had to drive 4 hours that night back to the site I came from and, prepared for the Sunday game like I normally do. And I didn't tell anybody I did the game I did in Carbondale, but I can tell you that I had a bunch of coaches reaching out to me saying, "Wow, like I turned on the TV and I saw you on the SIU Bradley men's basketball game on CBS." And so there was a lot of coaches that were really impressed that I did that stretch, because they knew the distance and they knew the turnaround for all those games. And again, it's not something I brought up, but when you don't make excuses, when you're going through the grinds like that, really weird situations. Obviously it was not an ideal situation with doing that game on such short notice, but you just do it and you let the work speak for itself.
Speaking of not making excuses, I had an algebra teacher in 8th grade. Peggy Gladue was her name, and the one thing I remember nothing about algebra, but her saying was, "Don't make excuses, make good." And I've never forgotten that. Bija, anybody who has a question, let me know either via chat or the hand raise.
Dave, if I could also add along the lines of what your math teacher told you, Tim Gleason, former defenseman for the Carolina Hurricanes, when I was doing an interview show, and I still do it, it's called Canes Corner. So when the season's on, if you hockey fans want to find out a little bit more about the Canes or the game, it's Canes Corner. Good sell? Yes? No? Okay.
Even in the TV voice, I like that.
But Tim said that his dad told him that, Tim goes, he had a bad game. And his dad goes, you weren't really good tonight. And Tim goes, well, I was playing with a bad knee, and in the middle of the game, a puck hit my elbow, and then I had to fight, so I wasn't feeling great. And Tim's dad goes, nobody cares, Tim. They only care if you do the job. So, Tim telling me that, and to Kelly's point, nobody cares that you were in, Des Moines, on Thursday night, and now all of a sudden on Friday morning, you've got to be in Los Angeles. But what you need to be is prepared for that. If somebody offers you the opportunity, you need to be prepared to walk through it. You need to have the attitude of, if they give me this chance, I'm going to be able to do the job that they want me to do. So kind of along those lines, it's what you said. And again, the Bill Parcells thing, just show me the results. That's all that people care about. But you need to be able to, when somebody opens that door for you, don't come up with excuses why you can't. You have to have the reasons why you're ready for it. And it could be, again, Kelly, if you're doing a Missouri Valley conference game, but then somebody asks you to cover the Pac-12, don't be like, oh, well, I only focus on the Missouri Valley. You're like, no, I've got enough. There's tools. I'll know enough about the Pac-12. And this is something too that I don't know if enough talent gets this behind the scenes. You have so many people who are willing to work with you on that production crew, from the producer to the director to the stats people, where if you have questions, you can ask them, hey, what do I need to know about this? Or, this is kind of short notice. What do you have for this game to get me going into? This is what I have. This is what I put together in a short amount of time. But all of this is at our fingertips for what we want to do. And you can put it together. So basically have the attitude of yes, I am able to get this job done for you. And the same thing with Kelly. Kelly, back when I worked in radio, and Dave, this because of, you I think have 15 jobs from what I know about Dave Gorin. But back when I worked morning shows, I'd do the morning show, then I would do pregame for hockey, and I'd do postgame for hockey. And then during ACC basketball time, I would call ACC basketball games, and people would be like, well, when do you sleep? And I'm like, well, June, that's a good time to sleep. But it really wasn't the case. You make the time. You find a way to make it work. And people notice that about you, that, okay, this person's good at their job, and not just good at the job. I can put them in different roles, and this person will excel. So I think that's the big key. And again, people don't want to hear that you had to fly from New York to LA. They just want you to do the job. And again, there's no heavy lifting in our job. Well, sometimes there's heavy lifting, but not too much. But we're not digging ditches. We're not building buildings. On our worst day, we have to come up with a really interesting story on a player before we go on the air. And 3 or 4 hours, we can come up with something if we know what we're doing.
Could make it up if.
That's sports talk radio, which gratefully I am out of that industry. So.
We have a first question from Bijan Todd. Bijan?
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Mike and Kelly, for doing this. I'm Bijan. I'm one of Dave's former students at Wake. Just graduated in May. And so, Kelly, what you said about, taking no positively and, using it as motivation, my question kind of plays into that. So let's say you email a potential employer about a job opening, and, you want to sort of get their name and you want to keep you in their heads, and they don't respond to your email, and then you send another email and they don't respond, and then you call them and you leave a voicemail. My question is, what's the etiquette behind doing that to the point where you keep yourself in their minds without annoying them? And so if anything opens up, they think of you. Is there a way to get around that?
Yeah, I would just keep doing what you're doing. Here's a story that I can tell you. There's a person at ESPN that I've been emailing for years, trying to get them to look at my reel and consider me for doing games. And I have emailed this woman countless times and have never heard anything back. And finally, a couple of months ago, I emailed her, and she actually wrote back. And so, and I have a friend, a girl that I'm friends with, that was on my podcast. That same thing, had the same story about the same person, that she had emailed this person for years, and all of a sudden, the woman finally emailed her back, and now she's working for the ACC network and doing pretty high level basketball games now. So I think your persistence is going to pay off. Just keep emailing the person. Don't email them every day, obviously, but stay top of mind with them, because if you keep sending emails and showing your persistence, how can somebody not respect that? Because there's so many people that send emails and reach out to people, and maybe they follow up once, or maybe they follow up twice, and then the person never hears from them again. So it's going to pay off. The one other story I'll tell you is that when I started my career in local TV, it took me 13 months to find, and again, this was not in a pandemic. This was just back in 2004, 2005 when I graduated. I literally sent out tapes, and I'm dating myself a little, but this is back when you actually sent out VCR, like videotapes, even before you sent out.
Kelly, you are not dating yourself. I am far more a dinosaur than you are on that one.
So I was on a first name basis with the woman at the post office, because I would go in there every day with piles, absolute, like I'm talking 5 to 10 USPS Postal Service priority mail boxes that were going out to the 210 TV stations all over the country. Any job that was open, I applied for it. And this woman just kept looking at me, and she would shake her head, and she would feel bad for me. And like, gosh, I hope you get a job at some point. And I would have monthly conversations with my dad, because at the time I was living in my parents' basement. I was working every production and any sports related job known to man in Phoenix, Arizona. Most of them were behind the scenes as a runner or PA or doing audio or whatever I could do, as long as it was related to sports. I was working another job in a grocery store to make money. And my dad would have monthly conversations with me saying, Kelly, maybe you should just take a job in news. Maybe you should just get your foot in the door and take a job in news. And I'd always say, Dad, no, I'm going to hold out. I'm going to get a job in sports, and it's going to happen. And I was making money. It wasn't like I was living downstairs in my parents' basement and they had to support me. I was making money in the Phoenix market, and I was basically working 29 days or sometimes all 30 days of every month, because I didn't say no to, I literally said yes to everything. And finally, after 13 months, I got close on a couple jobs, but I kept getting beat out by people that were already in other TV markets working. And finally, I got a phone call from Medford, Oregon after 13 months saying they wanted to hire me. And it's funny because I went into the post office and the woman started screaming because, I told her, look, I'm going to come in here one day and I'm going to come in here and tell you I have a job. And she said, I can't wait for that day. And so I went in there finally and said, Sherry, you're never going to believe I got a job. And she started screaming, and she came out from behind the counter and gave me a giant hug. And now even when I go back to Arizona to visit my parents and I still go in that post office, she still works there. And every time she comes out and says hello, because she remembers me, because I was literally in there every day for basically 13 months.
Wow.
How long did it take to get the money back from all that postage sending and paying for those tapes, right? I
joke that I single-handedly kept the U.S. Postal Service in business that year because I spent so much money on tapes. But, I think the people that make it in this business, it's not always the people who are even the most talented. It's the people that are resilient and that are determined to get into this industry no matter what it takes, even if it means working as a bartender on the side or working 2 other jobs. You do whatever it takes because it's worth it once you get it. And if you're good at what you do and you build relationships and you work hard and you cultivate sources and stories and differentiate yourself, then you're going to find success. It never plays out on the timeline that you think.
Yeah, and if I can kind of piggyback on that, if you're good, someone's going to find you. Like that's the attitude you have to have. So Bijan, for you, if you know you're good, you know that somebody out there is going to find you, but you're going to hear no a lot. Or even worse, and Kelly, I think even worse to me than hearing no, because I was cool with hearing no for jobs I applied to, is hearing nothing. And I know because that gets frustrating because all you want back is a response. Either I'm good or I'm not good or work on this. So to Kelly's point, Bijan, I wouldn't email every day. That gets a little creepy. But, check in at least once a week or once a month or send a tape and see what she goes in because you never know when you're going to get there. But at the same time, somebody out there, if you have the talent, will find you for a job. And then it becomes ball in your court. Is this the job you want? Is this what you want to do? And for me, I don't think, I kind of hate it And Dave, I know you've been around so many great broadcasters and people, and Kelly, you have too. There's never a job that is beneath a broadcaster or somebody, or there's a job that you feel that you can't do. And look, I've run, Kelly, you were talking about sending out tapes. I used to work in a radio station where you need to have an actual person from midnight to 6 in the morning to run the station to make sure that things went on air. So, I had that job, and I got to read one sportscast an hour from midnight to 3, but that was the job. And I'm like, somebody out there somewhere is going to hear this. It'll pay off. So you have to keep that up. You can't get discouraged if you don't hear anything. And like what Kelly said, somebody, it might take 13 days or 13 months. Somebody's going to find you, and they're going to send you an email, or they'll text you and they'll be like, hey, we have an opening. We think you're good for this. This is the opportunity we have for you. You go from there. But if it's weekends in Bend, Oregon, or if it's, Monday through Friday hosting Sports Center at 11 o'clock, if you put in the work, somebody is going to be like, okay, I've seen this tape. Let's give somebody a chance. And it's real easy. And Kelly, I don't want to just speak for myself, because you and I have both been through this. You have moments where you're like, do I want to keep doing this? Like, is it time? But if you kind of have that belief in yourself, you bet on yourself that you can do this, there's an opportunity. And one of the things, and I don't think this is egotistical in saying this, there are people in huge markets that I know, if you put my work against theirs, or Kelly's work against theirs, or Dave with what he does for Wake Forest, blow those people out of the water. But there's also somebody in some market somewhere that nobody's ever heard of that I know is better than me. They just need the opportunity. They need somebody to find them. So don't ever get discouraged. Don't be like, I'm not sending out the tape this week, because I think Kelly just had the great learning importance there, the great story, which is the week you don't send it out is the week somebody's really looking for your tape. And so there's a point of being annoying, like every day and asking, but once a month or checking up, at least you stay on the radar for people. So I don't think, while there's not a perfect answer to your question, I don't think as long as there's a position open, you asking about it is ever a bad thing.
Thank you both so much.
Oh, sorry. Peter Strata, you have a question or two. Go ahead and unmute. Thank you.
You guys got me?
Gotcha.
Thank you. Quick question for Mike. You were in a pretty unique situation this past Stanley Cup playoffs, filling in for John Forsland and also broadcasting games from Raleigh, even though they were happening obviously in the bubble in Canada. Were there nerves for that first broadcast filling John Forsland's shoes, and how awkward was it having to call games from a monitor? I'd have to imagine you pick up just so less being at the game, watching it in front of you versus just watching a tiny TV screen.
Anybody who does play-by-play or anything, you'd rather be there, because the game is not two-dimensional, it's three. So for me, being around the players that I am, if you're in the building, there's and I'll use the Hurricanes for the example. It's a really good question, Peter. Marty Nachos is about 6'4", and Teuvo Teravainen is about 5'10". So if I'm in the building, I know who they are because it's real life. On TV, a little bit flatter, a little bit harder to pick out who's who. So it was tough to start because I've done games on radio. And as Dave can tell you and Kelly can tell you, games on radio, you have a little bit more room to work with, a little bit more breath that you can take on the radio because you're filling in the gaps for the people who are not seeing it. But on TV, you kind of feel like, I've got to get this name right, or I've got to get this number right. So the Caps game, which was the exhibition game that started off the TV portion of my play-by-play, I was nervous for it because, you got to go back to Buff State and, Division III college television that's piped in through Buffalo State College. While the viewership was probably somewhere around 2 or 3%, put me on nerves. Not nearly as nervous as doing, a Fox Sports Carolinas game. So I was nervous for the first game, but then you realize you're just calling the game. If you've called the game before, That's all you're doing. That's what you go with. And to be honest with you, John is for my money, he is the best hockey play-by-play voice in the business. I've said this a million times. I'll continue to say that. But you can't think about, oh my God, I'm replacing John Forsland, or in Kelly's situation, you can't be like, oh, if Doris Burke taps out and Kelly gets in, you can't be like, oh my God, I'm in instead of Doris Burke. What are people going to? You just have to do the job. So honestly, by the time the Ranger game came around for me, the first round of the play-in series or the Stanley Cup qualifiers, I want to make sure I don't make the NHL upset with me. The Stanley Cup qualifiers, I was just calling the game, and I can't control who had the job before me or what people are going to think. I can only control how I called the game. And honestly, as the postseason moved on, it became easier because you just don't think about it. You just think about doing the job. And, for the moment, when you're in it, there's that take the deep breath. I'm about to jump in the pool. But when you're in the pool, you either swim or you don't. And, I decided that I was going to swim. And that's what it comes down to. And you can't forget, for me, what got me here. Somebody believed I could do this job. And you want to, I think in this world, it's gotten kind of negative. Like everybody, I'm going to show the age here. So Dave, if you want to mute me, go right ahead. It's the proving the haters wrong. Did I say that right? Sorry, guys. For me, it's gone from trying to prove the people who don't think you can do it are wrong to proving the people who believed you could do it are right, because those are the people who took the bet on you. And for me, that's just what it came into. Somebody somewhere down the line heard me call a game and said, he can do this job. Let's give him the opportunity to do it. So it's about proving them right more than anything. But Peter, it's a really good question, and sorry for hogging up the time on the answer here, but it's really what it came down to for me. You can't think about who you're not. You can only, in this business, you can only be you. I have a question, like when people ask me to talk to, groups of college kids or whatever, I got a kind of, not a gotcha question, but it feels like that. And I'm like, who do you want to be? And anytime somebody tells me, well, I want to be, and then you can insert whichever name you want, Al Michaels, Chris Collinsworth, if they want to be Wendy Nix, I'm like, no, you don't. You want to be like them. You want to be you. And that's the biggest thing. You can only be you. Have I borrowed styles from lots of people? Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's human nature, but I'm not going to try to replicate anybody else. I'm going to try to do the job, that represents me doing it, not be an imitation of somebody. And that's why we're all in this. And, I'm looking at the names here, Bijan, Lincoln, Richard, Ali, Kelly. I'm sure you had somebody who you wanted to be like, but now there's somebody out there who's like, I want to be like Kelly Burke. And, I have people like, oh, I want to be like you. I'm like, no, you be you. That's great. But I'm honored that you think that you want to be me. You don't want to be me. Be you and make your own name and go from there. So while it was daunting at first, Peter, it got real easy for me as the games moved on in the postseason, because I had a great team with Fox Sports Carolinas behind me, from the producer, Jim Malia, the director, Paul Hemming, and all the crew, where I'm working with them. And I wasn't really, once the puck dropped, I wasn't concerned of, oh, the fans out there are expecting John's call or Chuck Hayton's call, where I feel bad. Like Chuck gets kind of lost in the wash for the great voices that the Hurricanes have, and he was great. I'm like, I can't be them. I can only be me. And hopefully that'll be good enough. And the more I do this, hopefully it becomes good enough for everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome, Peter. Thank you.
Albert Hubbard, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. This question is for both the speakers. Well, let me premise this right quick. I'm actually a camera operator I was camera operator in sports. I worked for news reference for at least a year, and then I worked as a camera operator for news at my current station for 3 years. And I worked for several sports blogs. But my question to you two guys is my my main interest is like a sideline reporter, but how I really get started on that path because right now my interest is like becoming a sideline reporter. I mean, I'm not like trying to shoot, write, edit my stuff, but the problem is I never had a reel to show for it.
Kelly, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say for me, I think it goes back to when you talk about being a sideline reporter. I go back to when I started in radio. Dave and some of you folks will get out there. There's no bigger clash in college basketball or rivalry than Canisius versus Niagara. I mean, that's it. Forget Duke and Carolina. Throw the records out, but nobody where I was from cared about that, but I did because I knew this is what I wanted to do. So I kind of got into that realm of whatever assignment that can get me the reps, Albert, that's what I was going to do. So in a town that does not care too much about college basketball, I kind of became the college basketball reporter. Like I carved out a bit of a niche for me. Like wasn't the sideline person to start off with, but it got me in front of coaches. It got me in front of players. It got me the ability to put things that I could put on tape or put things in your case, on camera where you can then say, hey, this is what I want to do. These are the abilities that I have. I'm more than just a photog. I can ask questions that get really good answers. So for me, it just starts with if you see an opening at the station you're with or wherever you're at, where they need somebody to ask these questions, don't have them, be like, they don't need to send the reporter here. I can do this job, and then you can put it together from there.
Yeah, Albert, I would just also add to what Mike said. Just even some of the jobs that you've had and at the station and working at the baseball games, continue to foster relationships with your coworkers because ask people that are sideline reporters or people that are working on camera, can I shadow you? Because you'll learn a lot, not only from following them around, but you potentially, maybe they'll let you shoot a stand-up because obviously if you want to be on camera, you got to start building a reel. So try and develop relationships like that where you can shadow people and start working on your reel. And then I would also just tell you, I don't know where you live exactly, but go seek out the high schools and the community colleges and the local colleges in your area and see if there's a need for any sort of position, even if it's something you honestly have to do for free at first, just to try and get experience in any way you can doing reporting, and then you can expand your horizons from there. Because as Mike said, it's the ability to be versatile and to do all the different roles. I have a lot of young women that I mentor that reach out to me to get advice in general in the sports industry, and I always ask them, what do you want to do? And the majority of them say, I want to be a sideline reporter, which is a great goal. And it's a fun position to work and it's challenging. But I always tell them, look, that's a great goal. But also, besides being a sideline reporter, try out other positions. Try out play-by-play. Try out working as an analyst. Because the reality is, at least for a sideline reporter, if you just want to be a sideline reporter, you're really limiting yourself as far as the number of jobs that are out there, because there are a lot of games out there that don't use sideline reporters, especially right now in this pandemic. So the more you know how to do, both behind the scenes and on camera, the more versatile you're going to be and the more marketable you're going to be to a potential employer.
The bottom line is take the sideline part out of it. Learn how to be a good reporter.
Yes.
And that way it doesn't matter whether you're on the sideline or being a sports reporter at a local TV station or a network or whatever. If you can tell a story, there will be a market for you. And Lincoln just in chat just gave some great advice. You can shoot yourself doing sideline reports at games, especially if you work camera, then you know how to do that. And you can borrow maybe a camera at a station and go out and set up on a tripod, learn how to be a multimedia journalist, an MMJ. And that's how you get your reps. And we've talked about it several times on this series. Just like being the quarterback for a team, it's all about the reps. The more practice you get, because I think, in my opinion, talent is nebulous. I think everybody has talent, but the more you do it, the better you get. I mean, there are very few people who won't get better just by doing it.
Yeah, and Albert, even take your cell phone, and even if you're not on site at a game, just practice in your house, watch a game on TV, and choose some information from that game, or study some information about that game, and do a sort of sideline report, or do a report on your phone, because by taping yourself, it's all about getting more and more comfortable on camera. And nobody in this business is, at least I'd say 99% of the people out there are not born comfortable on camera. It's awkward. And it's something you develop and you learn how to get comfortable with. So the more you can do it, even just on your cell phone practicing, the better you're going to be when it comes time to do it in a real setting or in front of a lot of people.
If I can say 1,000% to what Dave and Kelly just said, if there's such a thing, that's it. I mean, people are going to be like, oh, you're practicing or you're doing this. Yes, that's how you get better at it. I mean, the only way you get better is to get in front of a camera. And if it's a cell phone, or in your case, Albert, if you've got a camera and you're set up at a game and you're shooting something, do a stand-up. Like at halftime, you got some minutes where you can shoot something for yourself and put something together, and you go from there. But the only way, and I'm with you, Kelly. I don't know about you, but I'm still in that 99%. When the camera's on, you're still like, this is still weird. It's what it goes into, but it becomes easier because you can then, you're not focused on the camera's on. You're just focused on, hi, this is what we're doing tonight. Team X is playing Team Y. We're going to talk to so-and-so in such a minute. And then you just go from there. But for some people, it takes a minute to get there. For some people, you can get there in a little bit quicker than that. But the more opportunity that you have to put yourself in front of the camera and tell a story, or, put something together, Albert, that's the way that it goes, honestly. And then I think that's pretty good. And I think that Lincoln has just also added to that, Dave, where, you got the tools to give yourself the reports, the practice. It's like, if you ever played any sport or anything you've ever done in life, the more you do it, the more second nature it becomes. So that's the best advice. And, sorry to all of our friends in college. I don't know about you, Kelly, but I have found out, and Dave, I found out experience is the greatest teacher. So, the more you do it, the better, or I should say, the more comfortable you become at reporting, asking questions, being on camera, all of the things that go with this job. And your attitude becomes more positive about doing it.
Mm-hmm. You talk about attitude. I mean, you're showing people that you care enough to want to do what you want to do by going out, and even if it's on your own, doing it. So that's good. Kelly, I'm sorry I cut you off there.
Oh, I was just going to say that what Mike just said really, really resonated with me, because when this is back before I got my first full-time local TV job, and I was freelancing in Phoenix, taking every job I could, and I was asked for ASU basketball games to be a sideline reporter. And the games aired at the time on a local PBS station. And I was working with two legendary broadcasters in Arizona. And then there was 22-year-old me who had no idea what she was doing, had never been trained how to be a sideline reporter, literally didn't know anything. And I got a couple games into the season, and I remember the announcers, they tossed it over to me for my opening hit. And I got 2 sentences into whatever I was talking about, and I literally forgot what I was talking about. I'm talking literally, mind goes blank. No words are coming out of my mouth. I look like a deer in headlights. I'm paralyzed. Nothing is coming out of my mouth. And I literally am saying to myself in my head, what was I just talking about? What was I just saying? And I couldn't remember. And so I said, Bob, back to you. And my producer got in my ear and said, Kelly, what the hell happened? Except he obviously used a lot more colorful language. And I told him, Sue, I forgot what I was saying. And so I had to go talk to him in the TV truck after the game. And I was, I think, 3 games into that season. And so I'm thinking, my career is over. I haven't even started in this industry, and it's already over. I just literally fell apart on live TV. And so my producer, again, asked what happened. And I told him I forgot what I was talking about. He said, well, don't you have notes? And I said, no. Am I supposed to? And he goes, yes, you're supposed to have a reporter's notebook with bullet points written down so that if you lose your train of thought, you can jog your memory. Okay, Stu, good to know.
Oh,
And so guess who came the rest of the season with a reporter's notebook and wrote down bullet points and never had an issue with that again. But again, and I mean, the worst part about that is I got the nickname for a while, Red Light Kelly, because people were like, okay, so every time the red light's on, she freezes. And so that's what I was known for the rest of the season. But obviously it's worked out okay because I'm working much higher level games now. So we all run into those situations. Hopefully you don't run into them like me on live TV in the Phoenix market. Luckily it was on the PBS station, but
All been there. We've
Yeah.
all been there.
oh, absolutely.
once.
Oh, but if I can back up what Kelly's just said, for everybody who's still tuning in right now, you have so many resources for these jobs. And I think that when we get into them, and I can go back to, when I got the sideline reporter for the Carolina Hurricanes, I was 40 years old. What's anybody going to tell me? Mike Gundy already said it. I'm a man. I'm 40, right? Whatever. So, but there was so much that I still had to learn because it's a new job and a different gig. Ask questions. Don't ever be embarrassed to ask a question of, what should I do? Or do I need this? Your producers are there for you for that. The talent can help you with this. And Kelly, I've been down that road because you're like, oh, they gave me this job, so I'm just going to walk into it. And you're like, well, you have people who are there to help you. So you can, I think so many times when you see somebody who has that moment, and we've all been Red Light Kelly, just so you know. So, and if everybody who's listening, I hate to do this to you. Dave's already said it. It's going to happen to you. It's how you bounce back from it. And Kelly's done that. I've done it. Oh, there have been moments where, I'm talking and you forget a name, and it's a name you've said a million times, and it's not because you haven't prepped or haven't done your homework. You just, space out, and it happens. Exactly. You get the brain freeze without ice cream. But it's, for me, you have all of these resources, folks, if you're going to get into this industry. And I think when you talk about the attitude, don't walk in with the attitude that you know everything, because there's always something to learn. There's always somebody to talk to. I can promise you, if Kelly and I swap notes right now, I'm going to pick up 4 things that she does about the job, sideline reporting, that I would never have thought to do. And they'll make me better. And hopefully vice versa. It's just how you work with this. And Dave, who's been there forever, it's the same thing. So you have all of these resources in this business. And yeah, you're going to have some moments where you hope they burn the video, the tape, the internet goes out, all of that. But it's how you bounce back from it too. But you learn from those as well. But it's the same thing.
Blooper reel.
Oh, absolutely. And again, never be too far away from one of these notepads. Even if you have make sure you eat breakfast on here, it's still something to have. So.
Dominic Petrillo, you have a question. We're about out of time, but we'll let you get in one more. Go ahead, Dominic.
Yeah, a quick comment about the Mike Gundy. He may have been a man at 40. I'm not sure what he is now, but I think he might be Benjamin Buttons.
I'm not growing a mullet, by the way, Dominic, just so you know, and neither is Kelly. Dave, if you want to, that's on you.
If I could.
I can't. That's right. I'm blind. I couldn't see it anyway. But my question actually is for Kelly. She mentioned that she has a lot of younger women that come up and she mentors, and they always say that they want to be sideline reporters. And you said you graduated college in 2004, so you're basically a year or two maybe younger than I am. Do you think that a lot of that is because they think that growing up, from what you saw and probably what I saw as well, is that's all you saw women being able to do in sports with sideline reporting, so they don't think they can shoot any higher than that? And how do you get them away from that to realize that they can do the Leslie Vlisser and now Julie Donaldson with the Washington football team taking over for the play-by-play and stuff?
Yeah, no, Dominic, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's a huge part of it, is that's what traditionally the roles that you've seen women in. And so I think I think in another 10 years, especially, we're going to start to see that change because of people like Doris Burke and Kate Scott, who's in the Pac-12, who does play-by-play, and Beth Mowens, and people. Again, it's still, women are still in the minority as far as in those play-by-play and analyst roles, but you are seeing more and more of them. And so I think especially the young girls coming up now are going to realize I can do any of these positions. And that's going to be huge because it's the whole thing. If you can see it, you can be it. And that's what was so interesting in talking to Leslie for the podcast was, I mean, she did it at a time there. She was the first. She literally was the first NFL female beat writer. And she used to have to go stand in freezing cold parking lots in Green Bay, Wisconsin, because women weren't allowed in the locker room. And that was the only way she could get the interviews with the players. And so she didn't have somebody like that. She didn't have somebody like me or Doris or Kate or Pam Ward to be able to see, oh, okay, this is possible. And I think we're even going to see that just even, you know, I've even my colleagues who I'll just use it as an example are Black. We're seeing more and more Black women getting into sports and again, not just in the sideline reporter role. And so it's huge when they're able to see somebody, but when they're able to see Maria Taylor doing what she's doing on ABC Sports and ESPN, because when Maria was coming up, and I only know this because I've talked to her about it, her one example was Pam Oliver that was doing it. And now you have all these women. You have Taylor Rooks and you have Maria Taylor and you have Megan McPeak, and the list goes on and on. And so I think that's going to be huge. And then also, I mean, I would say in my career, I mean, there's been so many men who have been super supportive throughout my career journey. And so I think you're seeing men, it's just everywhere now that men are super supportive of women, and it's much more openly accepted to have women in these different roles.
Kelly, I was going to, and Dave, if I just could, Kelly, you're way more qualified to answer that question than I am. But I have a real belief about this business and the jobs that we do. You can either do it or you can't. Your background, are you male? Are you female? You know, did you play? Didn't you play? People want to put so much stock in that. To me, I don't think that's it. Kelly can do the job. Kelly can do the job. I can do the job. Dave can do the job. Anybody here can. So.
Agreed. Well, guys, I can't thank you guys enough for your time this afternoon, and thank you to everybody else for joining in. A lot of insight, as we seem to have every week. Just when I think we can't get better, it gets better every week. So Kelly and Mike, thank you very much. Thank you guys for joining us again, and thank you to Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. for supporting us. Hope everybody has a great Thursday, great Friday, great weekend, great rest of your life.